Welcome to Mindful with Minaa. I'm your host, Minaa B. I'm an author, therapist, and creator of the Siblinghood Theory. And this show explores the themes of belonging, conflict, and the relational patterns shaping your life. Let's dive in. Friendship has been on my heart lately, and so the next few episodes from me most likely might be friendship centered. And for this particular episode, the inspiration behind it came from a thread that I am seeing constantly all over social media, which is this conversation where I see women saying they had these massive friendship blowouts and they feel that there are women who will give men multiple chances to either disrespect them or harm them. But the moment a friend does one thing to them, they easily cut the friendship out their life. Now, I believe that there are a multitude of reasons for why this happens. And I realized that I wasn't going to be able to get all of my thoughts out in one podcast. I literally had to re record this episode because I wanted to stick to one particular topic and get to the depth of that topic. So that's why I said the next few episodes will most likely be centered around friendship. I'm not 100% sure yet, but I really want to drill into our perspective around friendship and community because we are living in a loneliness epidemic. So many people are talking about community, and I think that there's a core piece to this conversation that is not being talked about, and I want to address it in this episode. And one of the things I want to explore today is how friendship has been structurally devalued in our society and what that devaluation costs us relationally. When you look at social hierarchy, friendship doesn't grant you social status the way marriage, parenthood, or career success does. Being a wife, a mother, a VP, these identities elevate you. They come with recognition, resources, and entire industries built around helping you succeed in those roles. We have a plethora of podcasts and books and speaking engagements centered around parenting, relationships, and career. But friendship sits at the bottom of the hierarchy. And here's what happens when something is culturally devalued. We don't fight for it the way we fight for things we're taught matter. When a marriage is struggling, we go to couples therapy. We read books. We have hard conversations. We invest time, money, and emotional labor into repair because we've been taught that marriages require work. When parenthood is hard, we seek support groups, parenting classes, even professional care from pediatricians and therapists and a whole community. There's an entire infrastructure built around the idea that raising children requires resources and community. But when a friendship is struggling, we let it fade, we ghost, we tell ourselves people grow apart or friendships are seasonal. We don't have friendship therapy. That's not the norm. We don't have a plethora of resources on how to repair a friendship after conflict the way we do when it comes to repairing marriage when there are ruptures. And we don't have scripts for saying, this friendship matters enough to me that I want to work through this. And I think that is why we are seeing these messages happening on social media where women feel like their friends will easily cut them off or be very angry at them for the slightest thing, but a man can do the same thing and get away with it. And I think it's because we've internalized a cultural message that friendships are supposed to be easy, low maintenance, and frankly, replaceable. If it gets hard, you just find new friends. Unlike a marriage where there's social pressure to make it work, friendships have no formal structure. First of all, there's no ceremony when you become best friends. Nobody is necessarily celebrating the fact that you found a new bestie. There is no legal contract needed when you make new friends. There's no shared last name or joint bank account or custody arrangement if it ends. So when conflict shows up, and it will, because all relationships involve conflict, we don't have a framework for navigating it. And we treat friendship like it should be effortless. And when it requires effort, we assume something's wrong. And that results in people ending friendships that they could have repaired. But because people have never been taught that friendship, like intimacy, matters, we're now also realizing that friendship requires work. Here's what I want you to understand. The reason friendship feels disposable isn't because friendships are inherently less important. It's because we've been systemically taught not to value them. And what's interesting is that research tells us a completely different story about what actually matters for our well being. So I combed through different studies because I really wanted to make sure that I was sharing significant data around why friendships matter. A Harvard study of adult development shared that the quality of close relationships, not wealth, not fame, was the strongest predictor of long-term well-being and longevity. Psychologist Julian Holt-Lundstad's research shows that chronic loneliness increases mortality risk at levels comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And studies published in Psychological Science show that close friendships are associated with lower rates of depression, anxiety, and cardiovascular disease, especially for women. What's interesting is that these benefits exist independent of romantic partnership. So we know friendships are essential to our survival and well-being. We have decades of data proving it, but we still don't treat friendship like it matters. And I want you to think about what happens when you tolerate behavior in friendships you'd never expect in romantic relationships. Your friends cancel on you repeatedly, you tell yourself it's fine. Maybe your friend criticizes you in front of others and you laugh it off. Your friend ghosts you for weeks, you assume they're busy. But if a romantic partner did any of these things, you'd address it immediately. You'd have a conversation. You'd consider it a relationship problem that needs attention. So here's the question: why is there a different standard? It's because romantic relationships have social weight. Breaking up requires a conversation, but friendships, we just let it dissolve. And we accept that as normal. So, like I said earlier in this episode, I am really centering community and connection and really helping us understand belonging and how conflict gets in the way of belonging. For this episode, I really wanted to understand, why is friendship devalued and when did that start? Because I don't think this is a new phenomenon. I think that this has been happening pre-pandemic, but we're feeling it more deeply. And one of the things that I came across was the concept of mononormativity. Mononormativity is the societal assumption that monogamous romantic partnerships are not just one way to structure your life, but the only legitimate way. It's the cultural framework that positions a committed, exclusive romantic relationship as the ultimate relationship you should be working toward. Under mononormativity, romantic partnerships are treated as inherently more important, more serious, and more deserving of time, energy, and resources than any other relationship, including friendship. It's the reason why we have legal protections for spouses, but not for friends. It's why you can take bereavement leave, for example, when your spouse's parent dies, but not when your best friend's parent dies. Mononormativity doesn't just privilege romantic relationships, it creates a hierarchy of relationships where friendship is consistently ranked as less important. And this shows up everywhere in how we structure our time and what relationships get celebrated with ceremonies and legal recognition, and in which relationships we're expected to sacrifice other things for. This is why we have a culture of it being normal to celebrate people when they're having a baby and throwing them a baby shower or having a wedding. But if your friend gets a PhD, or if your friend gets that book deal, or if your friend gets that promotion, it's not really something that many people realize it's worth celebrating because, again, friendship falls very low on the social hierarchy. And tied to mononormativity is what journalist Amy Guerin calls the relationship escalator. The relationship escalator is this socially prescribed path that romantic relationships are supposed to follow. You meet someone, you start dating exclusively, you move in together, you get engaged, and ideally until death do you part. It's presented as the only legitimate trajectory for serious, intimate relationships. Here's what this means for friendship. If you're riding the relationship escalator with a romantic partner, friendship becomes something you fit in around the margins. Your partner becomes your primary relationship by default. The person you live with, share finances with, make major decisions with, prioritize above everyone else, where friendship becomes secondary. They're the relationships you maintain when you have leftover time and energy after you've invested in your partner, your kids, and your career. And when you're taught that the relationship escalator is the path to a successful, fulfilling life, friendship starts to feel optional. It's nice to have, but not necessarily essential and not worth the same level of commitment or investment. But upon my research, it wasn't always this way. So, when I took a look at history to really understand when romantic relationships started to dominate the social hierarchy and the social structure of what it means to have some semblance of power and acceptance in society, I came across a lot of data that takes us back to the 18th and the 19th century. And I thought it was really interesting, and I wanted to share it here because around that time, same sex friendships, what historians call romantic friendships, were emotionally intimate relationships that were celebrated and socially accepted. So around that time, men wrote to their male friends using language like, my dearly beloved, and very affectionately yours. Imagine getting a letter by your homeboy or your homegirl that says, my dearly beloved. That would never happen in today's society. And around that time, women had passionate friendships where they shared beds, wrote love letters, and built lives together. These relationships weren't considered threatening to marriage. They were seen as noble, enriching, and even essential to a person's well-being. Here is when the shift started taking place. Around the early 1900s, this was a time when sexologists and social scientists began pathologizing same-sex intimacy. Romantic friendships started to be viewed with suspicion. So intense friendships, especially between women, were suddenly seen as a threat to heterosexual marriage and the nuclear family structure. Cultural messaging began to position the married couple as the primary unit of society, and friendship was pushed to the margins. Throughout the 20th century, this shift intensified. So as women entered the workforce and dual earner families became the norm, time spent socializing with friends declined dramatically. Research shows that after 1965, the time Americans spent socializing with others off the job declined by almost 25%. So free hours were increasingly spent with spouses and children, and inward turning family life became close friendships' worst enemy. Over the course of the 20th century, romantic partnerships became the primary or even exclusive relationship expected to provide intimacy, affection, and emotional support. We started asking our romantic partners to be everything to us: our lover, our best friend, co-parent, business partner, emotional support system. And in doing that, we stopped building the kind of deep, sustaining friendships that previous generations relied on. And here's the relational consequence. When you don't value something, you don't develop the skills to maintain it. It's that simple. We don't learn how to have hard conversations with friends because we assume hard conversations mean the friendship is over. We don't think that about our relationships. Now, of course, if you have anxious attachment style, that's a completely different story. But normally, we expect that hard conversations are normal. Again, that's why we have resources and conferences and all of these different things related to conflict in relationships, because we know it's going to happen. But we don't expect it to happen in friendships. And as a result of that, we don't learn how to repair after conflict because we were never taught that friends can hurt each other and still choose to stay. We don't learn how to set boundaries in friendship because boundaries feel like rejection rather than care. So friendships, not because they weren't meaningful, but because we didn't have the tools to navigate their complexity. And we didn't have the tools because we were never taught that friendship, messy, complicated, conflict-filled friendship, is worth the work. And today, I want us to start valuing friendship the way we've learned to value therapy, boundaries, healing, inner child healing, all of those things. I want us to expand our understanding of what matters beyond marriage, career, and parenthood. Because your friends will show up when your marriage ends. Your friends will support you when your job disappears. Your friends will hold you through the hardest parts of parenthood. Good friends will. And that's going to be a completely different episode to really get into the intricacies of what makes a really good friend. But I think it's important to understand that friendship isn't supplementary to the important relationships in your life. Friendship is foundational, and it's time that we treat it that way. So how do you actually do this? Especially if you're recognizing I grew up in a home where I was actually taught to devalue friendship. Think about if you grew up in a home where you were told friendships are bad. You don't need friends. This is why you have siblings. Friends are going to be your worst enemy. Friends are haters. Friends are all of these negative things. And that has played a role in your programming and how you have pursued friendships as you were growing up. Because again, society has taught people to devalue friendship, especially American society, because we're not necessarily a community-focused society. We are a very individualistic society. So learning to push back against mononormativity and the relationship escalator is going to take a lot of work, but you can learn to reclaim the value of friendship. And here are some things that I want you to start doing. You need to learn how to reframe effort as care, not burden. If you have to work to maintain a friendship, that doesn't mean something's wrong. It means the friendship matters enough to invest in it. Stop treating ease as the measure of a friendship's worth. So for those of you who are like, I really like low maintenance friendships because I don't have to do the work, yet you feel like you don't have very intimate, deeply nourishing relationships, I really encourage you to ask yourself, why is doing the work of investing in a relationship considered hard to me? Why is it that I want things to be low maintenance? And if I do want things to be low maintenance, then the consequence to that is I may not get the deeply nourishing relationships that I desire. Another thing to understand is that repair scripts for friendship is important when you're dealing with conflict. So you need to practice saying things like, I care about this friendship enough to work through this tension instead of ghosting or withdrawing. Friendship deserves the same repair work you'd give a romantic relationship, which means the same way we are taught to learn how to communicate to our partner, we have to learn how to communicate with our friends. I statements, I feel, I'm hurt by. Start off with I to center your feelings and your experience. But just ghosting, isolating, and withdrawing at any moment there's conflict in a relationship really shows signs of emotional immaturity. And I really encourage you to work on that if, again, you want deeply fulfilling relationships. In any relationship, you have to set boundaries as an act of preservation. Saying no to a friend or expressing a need isn't rejection. It's how you protect the relationship from resentment. Boundaries keep friendships sustainable. We need boundaries in every area of our life. So it's normal to say no to a friend. It's normal to set limits with a friend. When it comes to boundaries, however, this is also something that I want to share because we are being taught no is a complete sentence. And I actually believe that there are times where no needs to be followed with a ... depending on who you are in relationship with and who you are saying no to. And what I mean by that is there are times where an explanation is a courtesy and it actually helps to deepen and strengthen the relational bond. To give you an example of that, if your very close friend invites you to their destination wedding and you send them a text and say, no, I'm not coming. that can feel a little cold. Whereas if you say to your friend, hey, thank you so much for the invite, I'm not coming because I can't afford a destination wedding, that gives your friend a lot of insight. And the more information your friend has, the less assumptions they have to make. And I truly believe that when we are in intimate relationships with people, being able to explain ourselves is a courtesy. And there is a difference between explaining and over explaining. And I think a lot of people are so used to over explaining, they're assuming that I don't have to share the reason for my boundary. And it's because you're so inclined to overshare that you don't realize something as simple as, hey, I don't have the money to go to brunch this weekend, so I can't hang out. It's simple. You don't have to say, hey, I don't have the money because I was struggling this week and I had to pay my rent, then I had to pay my car note, and then I was behind on my bills. People don't need to know all that information. Now, if you want to share it, go ahead. But you really have to learn the difference between oversharing and just giving a basic explanation for why you are setting the boundary in the first place. Because when people understand the reason for your boundary, that can also strengthen intimacy because it allows people an opportunity to get to know you on a deeper level. So the next time you think of just saying no and saying no is a complete sentence, I really encourage you to take a moment to pause and ask yourself, who am I saying no to? Does this person deserve an explanation? Because not everyone will, but there are some people who do. The next thing I want you to think of is scheduling time with your friends the way you prioritize work meetings and dates with your partner. So if you wouldn't cancel a client, try not to cancel on your friend. Again, because we deprioritize friendships, we say to ourselves, oh, I have this thing on my calendar and I said we were going to have dinner and we were going to go to the movies, but I'm tired. I'm just going to cancel this thing, but my man is taking me out. And I really encourage you to think about that. When your friend is really low on the social hierarchy, they're also going to start to notice that. And so when people start to act different toward you, you have to ask yourself, how am I treating them? And is it possible that I'm treating them in a way that's showing them I actually don't prioritize this relationship the way that I do other things? And again, you can prioritize friendship and partnership. Because I want to make that clear because I think it's easy to say, well, Mina, of course my husband will come first. I never said that your husband wouldn't come first. I never said that your children wouldn't. But again, where does friendship fall on the hierarchy? Do you value that thing? Or is that a ball that you continuously allow to drop because you don't care to center it in your life the way you center other things in your life? So just think about that. I also think it's important that you name the friendship explicitly. Tell your friends they matter. Say, you're one of my closest people, or this friendship is important to me. In my own life, I am constantly reminding my friends how important they are to me and how much I love them and how much I miss them. And I think we need to normalize that. Think about the last time you said to your friend, I love you. I miss you. I'm so happy that I get to be in this relationship with you. Our friendship is really important to me. Do you say those things? Don't assume that they know. Life is too short to be making assumptions about where we fall into people's lives. And I think that when you are deeply close to someone and somebody matters to you, show them, tell them. In a culture that doesn't celebrate friendship, we have to be intentional about marking its significance. The other thing is you really need to learn to develop conflict competence in friendship. You need to learn how to say, I felt hurt. Can we talk about what just happened on the girls' trip? Because I'm really hurt by the things that went down when we were on vacation. Instead of letting small hurts lead to resentment, you have to be willing to talk about it. Conflict doesn't have to mean the relationship is ending. It can be the beginning of deeper trust. So you have to be willing to develop your conflict competence. I understand that conflict can be scary, but you have to teach yourself that you can do hard things. And relationships are going to be the number one thing that brings up a sense of discomfort. And we have to learn to remind ourselves that being uncomfortable is not synonymous with being unsafe. Just because I feel anxious in my body, just because my nervous system feels dysregulated, just because I feel a state of panic or anxiety doesn't mean I am in danger. It might just mean that I don't have skills around this thing. And so my body is reacting to this the best way it knows how, which is my nervous system going into fight or flight or shutting down, me freezing and me feeling this sense of dread and anxiety. But that doesn't mean something bad is happening to me. It just means I'm uncomfortable. And developing your competency around conflict requires you to work through that discomfort. I also want you to question the relationship hierarchy in your life. Where are you unconsciously prioritizing romantic relationships over friendship just because that's what you're supposed to do? Think about those scripts that you were told in childhood, and even think about how you might prioritize other people as well because they have the label family or they're your sibling, they're your brother, they're your sister. So I'm supposed to deal with these things from this person. And I think this is the downfall of that social hierarchy. A lot of us are also taught that since we're supposed to prioritize family and we're supposed to prioritize romantic relationships, when those people harm us, we tell ourselves we're supposed to deal with it. And going back to that earlier conversation where women are saying, I can sit here and watch my friend be deeply disrespected by her man, yet the moment I say something, she has this internal reaction and shuts down and ghosts me. We have to be honest about the fact that this whole script of prioritizing romantic relationships and putting it high on a social hierarchy also creates this programming that says we're supposed to tolerate abuse and disrespect from these people in order to maintain that social status. Because if there's conflict in my friendship, I can easily ghost you because my relational status in that friendship doesn't necessarily move me higher on the social hierarchy. Again, what does the title best friend even mean? Yes, we understand it in a deeper context when it comes to a sense of community where this is someone I feel deeply close to. But again, when it comes to social capital, your best friend really doesn't rank high in that. But if I have a husband, if I have a wife, if I am a mother, if I can say I'm a parent, and again, going back to career, if I can say I'm a VP, that is going to move me higher in the social hierarchy and it's going to allow for greater social capital. And so there are people who will deal with nonsense and disrespect and tolerate dysfunction because they also recognize, or sometimes we don't recognize because it's happening unconsciously, where we don't realize because I've been taught to prioritize romance and the status that comes with being a wife, I'd rather be a wife and tolerate disrespect than be a friend and tolerate disrespect. And we have to get honest about that. We have to get honest about the fact that there are people who are willing to hold on to a label and hold on to a status just so that it can move them further in life or boost their self-esteem and their worth and their confidence, because we've been taught that having these labels make us worthy. But being a best friend, we were never taught that having a friendship makes us worthy. But being a wife, being a partner, being a parent, that has created this internal self-worth narrative. And a lot of people don't want to lose those things. So the next time you're wondering why your friend is tolerating disrespect from a man, it's possible that they're holding on to a particular social status, and that relationship might bring them this sense of worthiness that they feel like a friendship doesn't bring them. I want you to take some time to reflect and ask yourself, where have you let friendships fade because you didn't know how to fight for them? What would change if you treated friendship as worth the same effort you give to everything else you value? I truly don't believe friendship is failing. I believe it's being undervalued. And the work of changing that starts with each of us deciding that our friends deserve more than our leftovers. So thank you for listening to today's episode. If this resonated with you, please rate this episode 5 stars wherever it is that you're listening, and make sure you subscribe to the show. New episodes get released on Tuesdays. You can also subscribe to my companion newsletter on Substack, Mindful with Minaa, where I dive into deeper themes. And if you haven't already, order my book, Owning Our Struggles, so that you can continue to learn from me. The number one thing I want you to take away is understanding that what is important to you are the things that you're willing to fight for. So the question is, are there friendships in your life that are important to you? And if the answer is yes, how are you making sure that you are putting in the effort, intention, time, and care to prioritize those friendships? Until next time.